And welcome again to Washington Unplugged. I'm Bob Schieffer. Senator-elect Scott Brown received a celebrity welcome yesterday when he visited Capitol Hill. The Republican elected Tuesday to fill the late Senator Ted Kennedy's seat will shift the balance of power in the Senate. What does that mean for health care? We're going to hear from Democratic Congressman Anthony Weiner, who thinks the 41st Republican senator means that health care, or at least the bill as we now know it, is dead. I'll also be joined this morning by our National Security Team, Bob Orr and Juan Zarate, to discuss National Intelligence Director Dennis Blair's astonishing statement, which had the White House shaking their heads this week. Plus, Kaylee Hartung and Fernando Suarez will be along with insider looks at Americans who are helping in Haiti. But first, we want to go to Congressman Weiner. Congressman, I know that you have said that the health care bill that was passed by the Senate, that both houses have to step back from that and come up with something else. But are you getting a fix on exactly where Democrats are right now? What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, that's the big question. To some degree, we're waiting to hear from the mothership. We're waiting to hear what President Obama and his team think we should do next. Look, there's no doubt about it. For the last 6-8 months, we've been fixated on the 60th vote, and we forgot about the 100 million Americans out there who were losing sight of what it is that we were doing. Well, when I said that the health care is dead, it's because it was obvious. If we couldn't get something done with 60 votes, we certainly can't get it done with 59 votes. And the question is how we regroup. Now, I've advocated stepping back, paring this down to the things that we know are pretty popular. Now, we know, for example, that things like expanding Medicare to cover more Americans, filling the donut hole so prescription drugs are cheaper for seniors, and even things like the public option are getting kicked around again because at just the time we jettisoned it, it was becoming more popular in the country. But this is getting increasingly complicated, and frankly, it's regrettable that all of this time and effort went in, and yet still so many Americans seem displeased with it.
Well, do you think, for example, Speaker Pelosi, what does she want to do at this point? Do you have any indication of that, or has she shared that with members yet?
Well, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth on the House side because we have been watching the Senate move painfully slow. You know, they say that the Senate is the cooling saucer of democracy. They've been the icebox in the last several months. So what we're trying to figure out is whether there's something in the reconciliation process, which means things that we can get with 51 votes, that the Senate can go ahead and get passed. But even the senators can't even tell us that. They can't even tell us at this point what they can get 51 votes for and whether they're even willing to go with that process. We all know that the House, at least in theory, has to initiate the reconciliation process since they're spending bills, but we're waiting to see what that list would look like because we can't even get consensus from the Senate on what they can do under that process.
Do you think, Congressman, there'd be a lot of blowback when you mention that word reconciliation? Because people would say, well, this is just a trick. They know they couldn't get 60 votes. Now they're going to try to slip something by us here. Isn't there a danger of that, even just mentioning the word reconciliation?
Well, I think one of the fundamental mistakes we've made in this process is just stipulating to the idea that we're not a majority rule Congress, we're a 60% rule Congress. And if we'd done a little bit better job putting some of these senators on the line to say, look, we can't allow each individual senator to have a veto here, we'd have a little better time having this discussion today. But you are right. We've now so inured the American people to the idea that you need 60 Senate votes to do anything. It's very hard to dial back now and say, well, let's wait a minute. If we're able to get a majority rule in the Senate, that should be enough. That's what the Founding Fathers envisioned. But that's one of the complicating elements of this. You know, we in the House have been trying to get a majority ever since this first thing began, and all along the Senate has refused to move without that 60th vote, and the President has stipulated to it as well. And that's why we're in the rhetorical box we're in today. All
right. You don't see any chance that this something could get done and voted on before the President's State of the Union speech next week, I take it?
Well, it's not going to happen before the State of the Union address, but I got to tell you, the President is still the ultimate game changer, to use that parlance of recent times. If he stands up and finally focuses on the things that he absolutely needs to have in health care reform, things that he's prepared to go to the mattresses to get, and his desire to say, look, these are the 3 or 4 easy to understand things that he wanted to fight for, I think it would go a long way to resuscitating this. Much too much of this has been circling around the sausage making in Washington rather than talking in language that people understand around the country.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you very much. That, I must say, was some straight talk this morning, and we appreciate it.